All right, you all have to say, yes, I know what we're recording. Now we'll jump in and listen to Gary for a smidge. And again, write down some ahas, write down what you think is important, write down the things that surprise you that he says, and we'll clear it once we come back.
Hi, I'm Gary Keller. This course will allow you to get off to a fast start you can build on. Because if you repeated the principles every 90 days for a year, believe me, you have an awesome first year. And just as important, you would have built the foundation and momentum for your entire career. It is practical, realistic, and easy to apply. It's about the fundamentals that determine your level of success in the business of real estate. From our research with top agents, we have found that they too started their careers with these fundamentals, and they continue to do them along with their teams to this very day. And it's not hard. It just requires a little focused effort, a few hours every day. Now, there is really just one way to achieve the goal. It's lead generation. Now, other skills are important, yet without leads to work with, your skills won't mean a thing. Dealing with business never takes precedence over what? Finding business. Never. Research shows that top producing agents make lead generation their #1 priority and the one thing they make sure they always get done. You can do this. And when you do, you will get the leads, the relationships, the experiences, the career, and the income that you want and deserve. Go get them, and good luck.
All righty. Thank you, Gary. And that groovy music in the background. So what'd you hear? Dana.
Leads, and more leads. Lead generation is what it's about.
Yeah, it's kind of the ground floor of it all, right? We're in the lead generation business. We just happen to specialize in real estate. Think about it. Most people you know need to lead generate. Businesses need leads. If you know someone who's a plumber, well, they could be the best plumber on the planet. If they don't have leads, they don't have anything. You know someone who's a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant? Leads, 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 right? So are they doing the lead generation? Are they focused on business development and business growth with a specialization in the skill that they happen to specialize in your case, real estate? What else did you hear?
Hi, Rick. I heard that it is easy to apply. You just need focused energy and a couple hours every day, and you can do it. It is possible.
Yeah, I love that, Danielle. And the most important 2 words that Danielle just repeated were every day. Because the consistency with which you need to create that focus is what creates the success. Right? If you decide to get up on Monday and do some lead generation and then don't do it for 2 weeks, and then do it again, then don't do it for another week, and then do it again, your business is going to look like that, right? Kind of like Swiss cheese, lots of different holes. Every day with a focused period of time. I love that. John and then Tony.
I was going to say growing your business is more important than the current business.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest ahas from that 90 seconds, right? That we don't distract ourselves by dealing with current business. Yes, that means current clients and current transactions, and put that ahead of finding new business, of lead generation, of business development. Let's talk about that a second. Does that surprise anybody?
I'd like to know what the lead generation, what types there are out there specifically in detail.
Yeah, we're getting to that, John. Trust me. We're going to spend an entire week on lead sources and go through each and every one of them to make sure that you have not only an understanding, but the ability to create a strategy and a plan around each to begin implementing at a high level. Right, so be careful that we don't get sucked into the trap of, I have a transaction going on now, and I'm in the middle of my focused daily, as Danielle reminded us, focused daily lead generation block, when the phone rings and it's Maria Smith, who I have an offer in on this house with. What do I do? Here's what's real. Most of you would answer the phone and talk to Maria Smith. And Gary just reminded us that in order to create success and consistency in your business, dealing with current business never takes the place or gets in the way of finding new business. It's just about setting expectations and lead generation setting expectations and time blocking, and then following that time block, right? I can tell you in 23 years, here's what I have learned. There is no such thing, you should write this down because it's not in your materials anyplace. There is no such thing as a real estate emergency. No such thing. Someone always unmutes at this moment in time and says, well, what if the house is on fire? Guys, if the house is on fire, I sure hope they're not calling me. That's what 911 is for. Right? And yet some of this goes back to mindset, right? Because the mindset of scarcity versus abundance says, if I'm in that scarcity mindset, I have to answer Maria's phone call at that very moment, or the transaction might fall apart, or she might not think she's getting good customer service. And I can tell you that none of those things are true, because it's all about setting proper expectations up front. What my clients know is that I am unreachable between 9 and 11 o'clock every morning. Because if you're a buyer of mine, I am out searching for houses for you to purchase. And if you're a seller of mine, I'm out searching for buyers for your house. Trust me, when you set expectations that say, I'm doing the work that you need me to do between 9 and 11, they don't call. My voicemail says something to the effect of, now it doesn't say it anymore. However, when I was still in the field, my voicemail said, hey, it's Rick. If you're calling between 9 and 11, Monday through Friday, please leave me a quick message and I will return your phone call between 11 and 11:30. I look forward to our conversation. Bye. So now someone feels like they got recognized and they have every expectation that you're going to make that phone call returned in a couple of hours. Now, if you do that, you have to actually call them back between 11 and 11:30. Right? That's also an important part of this whole concept. But the idea of leaping out of your lead generation time to go and put out fires, trust me, that's all you'll end up doing. You'll become a firefighter. Here's what's cool. I've learned two things. When someone calls me at 9:30 with their hair on fire, anybody ever get one of those calls where their hair is literally on fire, right? Spinning around. Ah! One of two things happens by 11:15 when I'm making that return phone call. Either their hair is still on fire and I still have an opportunity to assist in solving that issue, or they've put out their own hair. The problem is now solved, right? If you give people an opportunity, they sometimes solve their own issues. All right, so we have a bunch of people unmute, Donna, Marlene, and then Tony.
So, in Ignite, I have some favorite spots, and that was one of them. I love the real estate emergency. Rick used to go into a little bit more and have you visualize driving down the road and sirens going and you have to pull over to the side and a car goes by and it says real estate emergency. Yeah, because that never happens, right? Never happens. I love that. I love that image. But I got to tell you, I mean, there are signs in both offices that say the day doesn't begin until 11 a.m. And that really is something you should start to marry yourself to, because as we're going to go through, Rick's going to lead us through, there are a lot of things that we have to do that are more important about our job that we need to do before we open up our life and our world and our schedule to the public. I was on something else today. So on Connect Live, and I think you can find it on command or in the pivot shift ahead, it's recorded there, but it was 8 tips for staying on your schedule. And one of the people said something that just made so much sense. Said, if you want to have control of your schedule, that your value proposition should not be that I'm available 24/7, because then you've given it away.
Amen. Right. So you're in control of that, right? You get to set those boundaries, you get to set the expectations. And as long as, remember, conflict only arises, you should write this down too. Conflict only arises from unmet expectations. And so if you set the proper expectations with your clients about how you're available, when you're available, and what that all looks like, there's never any conflict. Because everyone knows going in that between 9 and 11, or whatever your time block is, right, they shouldn't expect to actually get you on the phone. I think we were Marlene next, then Tony, then Anna.
Okay. So, I've had some of those real estate emergencies. It could have been, when you're negotiating a price and another buyer is getting involved and your buyer wants, to know exactly what's going on and whether or not we should be rebidding or whatever. That's one kind of scenario. Another emergency could happen during the inspection phase, with negotiating, going back and forth, and getting the feeling the deal may fall apart. So how do you deal with that? I've never thought about taking blocking out a certain amount of time, but, people call you, at all kinds of hours with, their fears and their emotional stuff going on. And, it feels like the deal may fall apart. So how do you deal with that?
Well, so let's remember, we're only talking about 2 hours a day in the morning, right? We're not talking about ignoring clients for days or weeks at a time. So it's only a small amount of time in the morning. And the reality of the examples that Marlene just gave is that none of them are emergencies, because emergencies require immediate attention, right? So none of those scenarios require immediate attention. They require attention. They just don't necessarily require your immediate attention. We tell ourselves, for lots of different reasons, I'm not going to go into all the different reasons, right? But we tell ourselves for lots of different reasons that these things are immediate needs. However, the reality of growing a big business is that if you cede control of your schedule to everyone else, there's no time to scale your business. You simply won't have time, because you're now running in 900 different directions. And what's unfortunate to me is that real estate, our industry, has done a really poor job of letting agents know that that's a choice that they make, right? If clients are calling you at all hours of the night, that's a choice that you've made. The expectations I set are that I have hours. My hours are from 8 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. My voicemail says, if you've reached me after 7, please leave a message here and I'll get back to you the next business day.
I guess I always thought of it as customer service. That was the headset of,
Sure.
being available and letting them feel that I am there for them, supporting them through their crisis or so-called crisis.
I believe you can have, this is one of those times where you can have it both ways, right? You can set expectations. I actually think people believe that your customer service is better when you give them the rules, right? Then they don't have to guess. And so if you're just setting expectations up front, then everyone knows. Now what Marlene said is really important. So let's be clear about something. Customer service is important. Please don't hear me say that customer service is not important. Customer service is massively important. So when you set those expectations about when you are available, please be certain that you are available, right? So it becomes a non-negotiable. If your return phone call time is between 11:15 and 11:45, you don't get to take lunch that day, right? And say, I'll call them later. No, you trained everybody that you're going to call them in that time period. So now you have an obligation to call them during that time period, right? But the idea of you being in control of your schedule is really crazy important. Or you literally end up getting stuck in a world that feels out of control. It's why real estate agents burn out, because all of a sudden that, at 10:30 at night, someone calls, and if you make the choice to answer that, boy, oh boy, that is on you. That's not on the client anymore. That's now on you, right? What I would say is, remember the mindset. That mindset kind of conquers all of this. And the idea of abundance versus scarcity, a scarcity mindset, that if this goes away, that's my path to paying my mortgage this month. That drives you to behave differently than a mindset of abundance. That's not to say that the transactions aren't important. Again, I want to be clear that I'm being clear. What I'm saying is your mindset will determine how you behave and whether or not you create comfort for yourself and for your clients around communication. Really important.
Right.
We went to Tony and then Anna.
First of all, I want to acknowledge Cal for his very funny response to the stress. That was beautiful. What I heard from the Gary Keller thing was basically in 90 days, there's going to be, and if you repeat it, you're going to have a great year. And this first quarter is really important to me. And I really hope that I can say at the end of this, it's certainly at the end of 90 days, that I've had a kind of a big change, because I'm looking for it. And I think I'm finding, certainly ever since I came here, it only reinforced that I just think so much of this is mindset. Think big. What's the first word in think big? Think. What's the first word in aim high? Aim. And then act. So think, aim, act. And Rick, you say so many things that I listen to you and I'm like, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. There's only one difference. You're there and I'm here. So that's what I heard Gary say, 90 days. I want 90 days. Yeah,
100%. And you know what, Tony, the only difference between you and I is the do, right? It's the do, because I've had longer to do it in this industry, right? And I've spent a whole lot of time training myself to focus on action, even if it's the wrong action, even if I fail at it, even if, right? Because trust me, I'm the poster child of overthinking. I have just trained myself to recognize the fact that I'm the poster child for overthinking, get to the point of thinking it. Gary teaches a course called Quantum Leap, which is really about your life more than it is about real estate. And in it, he teaches a concept called first creation, second creation. And what that means is you don't have a whole lot of control over your first thought or your reaction around something. However, you are in complete control of your second thought. Or Another way to say that is you can't quite control your natural reaction, but you are in control of your response, right? Those are two separate events. They might happen in split seconds, yet they're two separate events. And so over time, you start to train your brain to recognize, oh, okay, I'm doing it again. There's that overthinking issue. What would it look like if I didn't overthink it? What if I just decided to pull the trigger anyway? What if I just said yes and figured it out from here, right? All those things that go on in your brain. If you don't think I still do that 900 times a day, every single day, it's the way I'm wired. You just have to get to a point of, James Shaw said a long time ago, when I first met James, probably 10 years ago, he said something that that kind of changed my world, and write this down because it doesn't exist anywhere. He said, awareness is transformational. Awareness is transformational. So the second you're aware of something, all of a sudden you can start to change it, but you have to have that awareness. I remember when Debbie and I first bought the Stanford Market Center, one of the ALC members there, I was having a meeting with her, and every other or every third word out of her mouth was the phrase sort of or kind of. And it was all, so we're having this conversation around her business. And instead of, well, what is your goal? Well, my goal is to kind of be this and to sort of do that and to sort of have this and sort of kind of that number. And so I stopped her and said, are you open for a little coaching? And she cautiously said, yeah. I said, excellent. Are you aware that you say sort of and kinda a lot? And she said, I do? And I said, you do. I think in the last 10 minutes, you probably said it 20 times. Can I ask, is there a reason you use that? And she said, I don't know. I didn't even know I was saying it. I said, would it be okay if I offered to you that sort of and kinda is conditional language that doesn't allow our brains to commit? Right? It's like this safety net we lay out. What if you just decided what you wanted and were clear about that? Could you fail?
Can I just add something
Sure.
real quick?
You could fail, but you could also not fail, right? And so here's the point, and then I'll go there, Tony. So here was the point. About 6 months later, she came back to me and said, I just want to thank you because you said something to me like 6 months ago, and I don't know if you remember this conversation, but the day after you said it, I started to hear myself saying sort of and kinda over and over and over again. And I have worked really hard to just eliminate that kind of conditional language from the way I speak. And I feel better. I feel like I have more clarity around who I am, what I want, what my business, where my business is going. Because I gave her awareness, and that awareness became transformational for her. Go ahead, Tony.
So one thing that I've been doing that it's been helpful, we all have lists of things that we think about doing in our life. Some of them are big, some of them are small. And I've actually been making myself do some of them. And it really just as a function of just the anti-overthinking, who cares if you fail? Nobody cares anyway. It's not like they're going to remember you, but things that we all have things that we think about doing. And I think it helps with this business because it gives you courage. You realize the worst, what's the worst thing that could happen. And it's helped me work beyond overthinking. It's sort of the just do it thing. Plus it's nice to check off things that you've always thought about doing or talked about doing. So
yeah, 100%. I must have loaned it to a fellow overthinker. There's a book called Soundtracks by John Acuff, Acuff, I believe is how you spell his last name. John Acuff, Soundtracks. And the subtitle is, here's a book for all you overthinkers, right? And he goes through strategies to recognize when you're overthinking and how to kind of peel back that tendency and push forward. It's a great book so if you think you're an overthinker, I encourage you to read it. Don't think about reading it and don't think about what you might get out of it. Just go and read it. Just do it. All right. So there was one more. I think John had his hand up. So I'll go to John, and then John, do you have anything, or have we moved past it?
Yeah, we kind of moved past it. I don't want to keep going back.
Okay. And Anna, you too, you had your hand up. Still available, or have we moved past it?
I can share quickly. I was on the same pivot call recorded video. I mean that Donna mentioned, and it was nice analogy how to manage your time. And the map coach, she said, well, if I'm calling to the doctor and I'm trying to make appointment, and they said, well, the doctor will be available in 3 weeks. Would you like to make an appointment? And I'm thinking like, well, if it's only available time, yes. But if I will call to the doctor and the assistant said, well, the doctor is available since today till next month, what time would you like to book? Then I will have a question mark that she's so available. Maybe I need to go to the next doctor who is not so available.
Yeah, well said. Well said. It's like walking into a restaurant, right, at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, and you're the only one there. I think we may want to rethink this one, right? Why does no one want to eat here? What do they know that I don't know? Exactly right. Exactly right.
This book soundtrack, just if that's what you probably want to show.
Yes, thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. That's awesome. When that reminds me of a quick story. I was in Istanbul with my family, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, and we walked into a restaurant, and that exact same thing happened. Right, we're walking up this street to go into this restaurant, and it's just this big bustling street. If any of you know Istanbul, it was off Istiklal Street, like the main whatever. And so there's just tons of great stuff and people eating outside. And we get to our restaurant and we walk in, and my kids went first and I went in second. I went in after them, and I quickly scanned and looked around and thought, okay, we are the only human beings in this entire restaurant. After just walking past, 50 restaurants that are just packed with people. And so I walked in and I thought, okay, I certainly don't want to be rude. And so I immediately went, oh my goodness. I don't know where my wallet is. I think I may have dropped my wallet. Okay, I am so sorry, excuse us. Turn around, everybody. Out we go. We have to go find my wallet. And so now, of course, my whole family is going out the door and rushing back down the street, thinking I lost my wallet. And we got about 50 feet down the street, and I said, okay, everyone stop. My wallet's right here. I just didn't want to eat there. But I also didn't want to hurt their feelings either. So let's just go find a different restaurant.
Smart move.
I'm telling you what, I haven't thought about that in a long time. So remember, so again, that was kind of a bunny trail. However, a really important bunny trail about schedule management, right? Without schedule management, you turn over the results of your business to other people. With schedule management and discipline to follow your schedule, you now are in control, right? So those are the two choices that you have to make. Anything else from Gary before we move forward?
I was going to say, I think the thing that I always find the common denominator is consistency. The way he says, do it every 90 days, repeatable, which is something I always seem to get going, and then I drop the ball. And that's where you lose the momentum, and that's where you start to lose the buildup of your business.
Yeah, 100%, right? So it's the consistency of doing the important things every day that you choose to work. And when you do them over a period of time, I will tell you, if you're embarking with your team leaders on reading The One Thing this week, what we learn in The One Thing, right, is it takes 66 days to create a habit. So if you then follow Lisa's path of getting through doing something consistently for 90 days, well, you're now past that 66 days. So you've built that as a habit. You get to the end of 90 days, you get to reassess for the next 90 days, rinse and repeat. Make sense? But by the time you get to day 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, you've worked that muscle enough that you begin to really create that as a habit, and it starts to feel weird not to do it. Feels weird not to do it, right? All right, so in your materials, we're going to dive into your materials. I popped the link in the chat before for the materials. If you don't have them from yesterday, I popped it in there again, just in case you need it. Power session 1. Now, again, not necessary for you to be in there if it's a big pain for you to get the materials. However, if you want to follow along and you like that thing and sort of thing and want to take notes in your book, we're on page number 9 in power session number 1. Yes, we have been at this for almost 3 hours between yesterday and today, and we're literally just on the first page in power session number 1, but that's okay. We're all good. We're good. And so I want to spend a little bit of time on the 6 personal perspectives. Donna mentioned these yesterday. And the reason we go through them is because they are kind of the start, middle, and finish of mindset. Right? So to make sure that your head's in the right place, we're going to run through these 6 personal perspectives. And these 6 personal perspectives ultimately serve to answer the question, what is it that differentiates those who achieve at the highest level from those who don't? What do high achievers have in common? How do they behave versus everybody else? And these 6 personal perspectives are here to answer that. Page 10, personal perspective number 1. Commit to self-mastery. Commit to self-mastery. Anybody want to take a crack at what that means? You can break it apart too. What does the word commit mean? John?
Commit means to give your all towards one thing for more than just, one try. It's like something that you're going to keep at.
Yeah, whatever it takes, right? Commit to me means whatever it takes. I'm going to set a target and do whatever it takes to hit that target. That's a commitment. What is mastery?
Become good at?
Yeah, so Moses says
Proficient?
become good at, proficient, right? I would even say become so good that like what you're working on becomes reflexive, right? It's almost like muscle memory. You're so good at it, you kind of can't get it wrong. So then what about self-mastery? If mastery is what we just described, self-mastery then is you becoming an expert on you, right? So if you read that definition at the top, self-mastery is the possession of great knowledge, skills, and habits that make you the master of you. We can shortcut this personal perspective to committing to being the best you possible, committing to getting control over that thing between your ears that sometimes gets you in trouble instead of points you in the right direction. Oh, our brains. They're so awesome and so annoying all at the same time, right? Anybody ever feel like in certain scenarios, you're like your worst enemy? Like, oh, man, right? And remember, James tells us that awareness is transformational. So when you are aware that you are standing in your own way, the good news is you now understand how to get out of your own way. The bad news is that when you recognize that you're in your own way, it's sometimes more annoying than not recognizing, but that's okay, right? That's okay, because then you get to make a course correction. Personal perspective number 2. Commit to the 80-20 principle. Anybody ever hear of the 80-20 rule?
Pareto distribution.
Yes, it is absolutely the rule discovered or at least coined by Vilfredo Pareto. I just like to say his name, Vilfredo Pareto, right? Who was an Italian philosopher, I think. Who was an Italian somebody. And what he found is that typically 20% of your activities create 80% of your results. That's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your activities create 80% of your results. So would it be helpful to you to know what the 20% is for success and achievement in real estate? No? Okay. Brett and Tony say yes. So we're gonna move forward. Because I want you to recognize something, right? There's 9 billion things that you could do every day when you wake up and you're a real estate agent. Okay, well, which of those 9 billion things am I going to focus on? This conversation is going to give you that answer. Because there are certain activities that when you focus on just those, everything else shows up, because the 80-20 rule says 20% of your activities will create 80% of your results. The reason that most real estate agents don't make money, there, I said it. The reason that most licensees don't make money is because they spend too much of their time on the 80%. They spend too much of their time on the stuff that doesn't matter instead of focused effort on the things that do. So let's go through them. You can type these in or write them down however you want to. They're not in your book, so I'm going to give you these 20. Your 20% as a real estate agent consists of 7 activities. 7 activities. Number 1. Anybody want to guess what number 1 is?
Lead gen.
Lead generation. John Mendez, you get the golden ticket. That is right. Number 1 is lead generation, right? From our conversation yesterday and today, that should not be a big shocker to anybody. Right? Business development, business development, business development, business development, or lead generation, whatever you want to call it. That's number 1. However, lead generation without number 2 is kind of useless. We don't talk about number 2 quite as much. What is number 2?
Listing?
Follow up.
Lead conversion.
Yeah, lead conversion and follow-up. Lead conversion and follow-up. Think about it. If all you do all day is generate leads, but you never take that second step of actually converting the lead and following up to get to number 3, which we'll get to in a second, like, what's the point? You just have a big long list of names. A big bucket of names does not create income. Conversion, and specifically conversion to number 3, which starts with an A. Who wants to give me that?
Appointment.
Appointments.
Yeah, appointments. You got it.
Appointment.
Right? Without conversion to appointments, nothing really happens. So number 1, lead generation flows into number 2, lead conversion and follow-up. So once you have the name or know the person, now you need to have a system to follow up with them and scripts to convert conversations into actual number 3 appointments. So lead generation, lead conversion, appointments, which once you have your appointment, typically leads to number 4. What's number 4?
Contract.
Contracts, right? Contracts and negotiation, 100%. Now, contracts could be you signing a listing agreement with somebody. Contracts could be a buyer hiring you and you executing a buyer agreement with that person. Contracts could be you writing an offer to purchase a property. All of that falls into contracts and, of course, negotiation. And when you do that successfully, it leads to a word in our industry that everyone does a happy dance around. What's number 5?
Closings.
You got it. Closings. baby, who doesn't love closings? So number one, lead generation. Number two, lead conversion and follow-up. Number three, appointments. Number four, contracts and negotiation. And number five, closings. Now you'd think that that would kind of be the end, and then you just go back to number one, repeat the cycle, right? And from a business process perspective, that is correct, right? You now go back and you continue to lead generate, and you keep finding those folks to convert. You have the appointments, you write the contracts, you get to closings, you rinse and repeat. However, there are two more, 6 and 7, that are crazy important. Crazy important.
Staying in touch.
Yeah, so staying in touch is going to fall into either number one or number two, because you're either generating additional leads or you're following up with people you already know. So a lot of that staying in touch is going to fall right into, I would put it right into number two with that follow-up, whether they're specific leads or leads to be, right? You're going to follow up and follow up and follow up. Crazy important, crazy important. However, number 6 is something you're doing right now. Education. Education, script practice, and role play. That's all number 6. Education, script practice, and role play. You've got to be ready for 1 through 5. And that means learning new skills, practicing those skills, and role playing those skills, such that when you're in front of a client, you have ease of dialogue. And don't get cold feet in certain scenarios. Make sense? And number 7, who knows what number 7 is? Anybody want to take a stab at number 7?
Invest.
Yeah, I love where you went there, Donna. And so I'm going to broaden that to money management. Right? Money management. Now, trust me, if you don't do enough of 1 through 5, you'll never have to worry about 7, because there won't be much to manage. However, when you're doing 1 through 5 consistently and the money shows up, you have to be certain that you're ready to manage it like a business owner, create plans for the money you're making. And I love where Donna Doyle brought us. What does that look like in terms of investments and asset purchases, so that we now have a wealth building plan, so that our income, our 1 through 5, is now creating an income that we're using to create a long-term financial freedom plan. I can't think of a better reason to take a listing than to put that income towards an investment property, or however you're going to create that long-term wealth, so that I'm one step closer to that freedom number, that freedom date. I don't know about you, that drives me to get up every single day, take as many listings as possible. Right? So there's your 20%. Now you have a barometer. Now you have an outline to kind of, that exercise I told you about before, where you write down what you do every 15 minutes. Well, guess what? Now you can take that exercise and say, all right, am I focused on my 20%? Because now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Is that what I'm doing? Or am I spending too much time, making sure that my website looks pretty? Am I spending too much time designing the brochure for my new listing? Now, I know it's important to have a website. I didn't say it wasn't. I know it's important to have a pretty flyer for your new listing. I didn't say it wasn't. Although I will say, for those of you who know Jeannie Kassendorf and Todd Auslander, they closed $103 million worth of real estate in 2021. $103 million in real estate. They don't do flyers for their listings. They don't do brochures. They don't print anything. They just price them properly and get them sold. $103 million later. Just saying. Lots of different ways to skin this cat, right? So be careful that you're not falling into the trap of doing things that feel like real estate work that don't hit one of those 7 categories. Because you now have the tools to recognize when you're in your 80 versus in your 20. Now, if you make a conscious choice to work in your 80 because you're attempting to get something done or whatnot, then go for it. Too many of us are stuck in our 80 and we don't recognize that we're stuck in our 80 because we're not sure what the 20 is. Well, now you have some clarity around what that 20 looks like. Questions, comments, concerns about the 20%?
Yeah, can, as far as the brochure and the website and that kind of thing goes, how about giving that to your transaction management person?
Yeah, so if you have, I think outsourcing it, Marlene, is a great idea. Depending on who does your transaction management, that might not be the right same person for the creative side of things. And yet it certainly could be, right? It certainly could be. I think Marlene's point, if I could paraphrase Marlene, is we talked yesterday about getting somebody else to kind of offload some of the administrative stuff. Could that person be in charge of that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's the other path you could go down. If in fact it's all on you and you're not outsourcing it, you have to get really, really good at prioritization. You need to understand that when you wake up in the morning, that 1 through 7 is what happens first. And if you're going to work on your own website or design your own flyers or do whatever, do it at night when you're watching reruns of Law and Order on the couch, right? You're now using your time after hours to get that stuff done. I'm not saying that it can't be all you. I'm saying don't mistake the workday for reruns of Law and Order time. Dunk, dunk. Right? Did you ever notice that there is almost no time of the day or night that you cannot find a rerun of some version of Law and Order on some channel anywhere, like wherever you are on the planet?
I watch it all the time.
It's always on. It's always on. All righty. All right, let's keep moving. Number 3, personal perspective. Number 3.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Donna, go ahead.
Lisa Bennett had her hand up.
Oh, I did not see that. Sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I found like when it came to the database Excel sheet, when I first needed to put it all together, it was so overwhelming and I thought it was going to take so much time. I gave it to Leverage Out and they did it so quickly and put everything together because I knew it would never get done if I sat. I mean, it would take so much of my time. So that's always an option. And it's right in the office.
I love that. I love that. Right. So for those of you who don't know, Leverage Out is a leverage service company that is affiliated with our offices. I'll put their information in the chat a little bit later, or if somebody has it, if you want to pop it in there for everybody, that would be awesome. Jackie Giordano and Jen Bernanke are the two that run that business. Personal perspective number 3, moving from E to P. Moving from E to P. Anybody know what the E stands for in this one?
Entrepreneur, I think.
Yeah, so it's entrepreneurial, right? The other version of this conversation is that it's kind of the easy style, but that entrepreneurial easy style says that you get up in the morning and you kind of just do what you do. You do the things that come naturally to you. You do the things that are comfortable. I was having a conversation with one of your colleagues the other day, who kind of, I mean, she consistently does in that $8 to $10 million range, and she said to me, you know what, I think I don't want to be an $8 to $10 million producer anymore. And I said, well, talk to me about that. What would you like to be? She said, well, someone recently told me that I was a $20 million producer, cleverly disguised as an $8 to $10 million producer. I said, yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Talk to me about what's your source of business? And for her, it's just kind of, that 8 to 10 million just kind of shows up for her each year. It's a lot of sphere, it's a lot of connections, it's a lot of, you know, for those of us who had to claw our way to 8 to 10 million, frankly, that kind of business is a little bit annoying, right? It's like, well, wait a minute, that just shows up for you? That's awesome. And what if we added some strangers to that? What if we added some P to that, right? Because the P side of things is more purposeful. And it was fascinating having this conversation with her when she described what she did, which was very little for that $8 to $10 million a year to show up. And when we started to talk about what needed to happen in order to have more purposeful activity so that you had more purposeful results, because here's what I've learned over time. Even if you're in that E, that entrepreneurial style, and it just kind of shows up for you, it will dry up at some point. Or it will only show up as $4 million. And when you're used to making $250,000 a year, now all of a sudden you're making 75, that becomes a problem, right? So recognize that there are two styles of running and growing your business. There's that, I just kind of do it my way because it seems to work and I don't have to work at it too hard. And there's that more purposeful style. Now, here's the important part of this conversation. In the middle of those two is something we call a ceiling of achievement. You'll all bump into it at some point. Every single one of us bumps into that ceiling. Some of us bump into it, break through it, and then bump into it again, and then again and again. It's how you know you're growing. And here's what's crazy. For this particular person in my example, that ceiling of achievement was at $8 to $10 million of real estate every year. For some people, it's at $1 million. For some people, it's at a house. Right? So your ceiling of achievement, the way you naturally do things, is different for everybody. Doesn't make you bad, good, or anywhere in between. That ceiling, though, is different for everyone. The point here is you need to recognize what you do from that E, what you do that just kind of is easy for you. It's that I don't have to work too hard to make those things happen style. Versus, okay, what have I recognized that style brings me, right? So if you've done that for 90 days or for 180 days, or for those of you who have been in the business for longer, you've done it year after year after year, right? There's a way you do things versus a different way you do things. And the second you decide that you want something different from a results perspective, you now have to figure out a path to doing something different, more purposeful, to get different results. Diana Kokoska taught me that you don't get to better until you first go through different. Right? Meaning that if you want better results, you can't just keep doing the same thing that you've been doing and expecting different results. Right? There's a little phrase that goes along with that I won't say out loud. It has something to do with being cuckoo, right? Hey, Donna Gilbert, would you do me a favor?
You know I will.
Would you? Because I think that you've kind of worked through E to P in the last couple of years. I mean, from the outside, it kind of seems
it does seem that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does indeed. And so, can you just kind of describe that experience?
Yeah. So actually, next month I'll be in this business 20 years, and yet, as one of my coaches said to me, you've kind of had the same year for 17 of those 20 years. And so Getting back to what we were talking about before with the first generation, second generation idea about having that second thought. I started to get hit between the eyes with the fact that in October, November, when I did my business plan for the next year coming, I would put these lofty goals. And I'd even maybe write out, what I was going to do. And it looked very similar year after year. And year after year, I didn't hit those lofty goals. And then in this last, 2 years maybe, the E to P thing kind of really kicked in for me. E to P is also for people who think they're just smart enough, they just know enough, that, it's kind of been a little bit easy, or it just sort of happens, I'm good enough. Because it isn't necessarily even just doing more of the same things. You do have to do different things. And here's what I did that was different. One, I set some real goals and put some teeth around them, like why it was important. It wasn't just the numbers. What did I want to do with the rest of my life? Okay, I know that sounds heavy, but yeah, went there. And then started looking around, started hanging out in rooms with people who were actually achieving at the level I wanted to achieve or more, or newer people, less experienced people who were pushing through. And just saying to myself, well, here's one thing. Why don't I just do that? Why don't I just do what's in that? And why don't I just do what everyone's suggesting? Because it really isn't that difficult. It is about consistency, doing the right things over and over again, falling in love with the process, getting used to the monotony and the boredom of just lead generating and follow up, lead generating and follow up. Getting absolutely married to the fact that my morning belongs to me and my business. My day does not start until 11:30, 12 o'clock. It does not. I put hard barriers around that in the nicest possible way. And yeah, I do deliver great customer service. And in the last, 12 months at least, if not 18, my business has gone in a totally different direction. I'm achieving the goals that I'm setting, and I really am enjoying it. And oh, by the way, enjoying my life as well.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think is the reason I asked you to tell that story is because from the outside, well, that's a little bit of a cheat because I know a little bit more of the inside as well. But it appears that you have chosen a more purposeful style, however, still one that meets your criteria about how you want to show up, what you want to achieve, and how you want to achieve it.
Absolutely.
You don't feel like you're a slave to the business, do you?
Not at all. You know that I have something else in my life that I do that takes me away many weekends, and that is a non-negotiable. I'm not giving that up, which means that it all has to fit. And I worked it out so that it would. But I want to say, Rick, one of the things is thinking about it a lot, hearing other people define how they did their business and going, I'm a solo agent. My mission in life is not to have a big team of buyer agents, seller agents, that sort of thing. But having admin around me, yeah, because I don't want to do the 15-hour work. I don't. In fact, frankly, I'm not good at it. I'd pay somebody a whole lot more than $15 an hour to do that work because I'm not, and it holds me back. You get into the trap of, if I have more, then I'm gonna have to fill out more forms. That's not a mindset that drives you forward. So yeah, being very on purpose about the energy and the time that I spend in my business, the types of clients I'm going to work with, the type, whether they're buyers or sellers, that is very specific. What I do, and so somebody asked, what time do you shut down your business? Between 6:30 and 7, I'm pretty much done in the evening. I have, somebody in my life, a significant other, I want to spend time with him. There are just other things that I want to do other than service my clients. So that means that when I am servicing my clients, I am doing it at an extreme, I'm very present about it. So they feel cared for. they also know that, if they send me an email at 7 o'clock, I might read it, but I'm not responding to it.
Love it. I love it. I wanted you guys to hear what Donna had to say, because she's a perfect example of someone who has gone from E to P, who has taken her business to another level on her terms, right? And a lot of people, I think, hear this conversation as, oh, see, I have to be this, I have to be the head of this whole massive conglomerate of people, and I don't want that. I don't want this. I don't want it. It doesn't have to be anything you don't want it to be. However, once you decide what you want it to be, there is a version of purposeful that has to show up in order for you to move from where you are today to that. And I'll tell you that I had a coach at one time who, whenever I was attempting something new, right? Whenever you're looking to move from where you are to someplace different, whether it's in business, whether you're starting an exercise routine, or you're looking to lose weight, or you're right, whatever you're looking to do, there's that first, I call it the 2 week put a gun to my head, right, moment. Those first 2 weeks for me in something new, I don't like to not feel in control, right? We talked about control freaks yesterday, right? I'm like the president of your club. I get it, right there with you, right? I don't like to not feel in control. I don't like to not feel good at something. I don't like to not feel accomplished, like I'm achieving, like I'm, right? And so for me, the first 2 weeks in something new is a little bit of a torture, simply because I'm learning it. I'm getting there. I'm pushing from comfort in that E to something more purposeful to create a different result. And I had a coach at one point who would say to me, every time I got to that point, Rick, you're just moving from E to P. And I thought to myself, if she says that to me one more time, I'm going to reach through the phone and bop her on the head, because it was like, I got it. I know but it was frustrating to me. Understand, that's okay. Feel the frustration and just keep pushing through it. Because what that means is growth is happening, change is happening, right? Choose the excitement version of that and say, oh man, you know what? I'm getting better because this feels terrible, which means I'm no longer stuck in what was easy for me. I'm no longer stuck in my comfort zone. Now I'm attempting to move here. And I know that if I just kind of keep doing it, it'll start to become easier and less frustrating. That's how you create purposeful activity. Donna.
Yeah, I just thank you for saying that, because I did want to just jump back in and say, yeah, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't not filled with frustrations and real decision points. There was a point in 2022 going into 2021 where I was so busy, busier than I had ever been, because I'm doing more than I've ever done. And the market was, we all know what the market was like. It's nuts. And I was talking to my coach, and I said to her, do you think should I get an assistant? Should I? And she said, no, what you actually need to do is have fewer buyers and more listings. And it was like cold water in the face. I was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. That's exactly, I wouldn't have half of these problems if it was more listings and less buyers. So it says continuous growth through thinking through this and figuring it out, because the answer is there.
Love it. And it's a different answer for each of us, right? It could be the same answer, and yet it could certainly be a different answer, because everyone's circumstances are going to be slightly different. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Any other questions or comments on E to P? So here's what I would look for you to do. Figure out where you are right now. Figure out what that E looks like for you, and figure out what P you want to push to. I had a separate coach from the one I told you before, who I loved his version of E to P, because he had this, he made E to P into a chart. So he had E to P for his business. He had E to P for his finances. He had E to P for his physical health. He had E to P for his relationships. And he would just keep looking in each of these. Man, he showed me that one time and I thought, wow, that's a lot of E to keep track of, and a lot of P to keep track of, and a whole lot of ceilings of achievement to break through. However, he was achieving at really high levels because he was breaking things down and compartmentalizing and pushing from E to P in lots of different arenas in his life. And so I kind of adopted that and said, all right, you know, if he can do it, I can do it. So let's start figuring out what that looks like. Right. And so to this day now I work on, all right, well, where am I here? What's the comfort zone for me? And I'll tell you how I judge that, what my metric is for that. If I wake up in the morning and look at my calendar and think, oh man, I've got one of those coast days. That's a moment for me that says, are you sure that's the most productive you could be? Are you certain that you're in your 20? Are you certain that you want to have a coast day? Trust me, just like anybody, there are some days where I'm like, oh, baby, look at this, a coast day. Except I kind of reserve those for like the Tuesday and Wednesday in between Christmas and New Year's, right? Other than that, maybe, you know, like the day before Thanksgiving, right? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have kind of one of those coast days. Other than that, I take a look at what my calendar looks like and start to really make some calls about, am I too comfortable today? If I don't push myself with a P today, am I now behind? Am I not challenging myself at a level that will produce the results that I'm ultimately looking for? Because here's what I've learned. If you let yourself coast a day and then come back and kind of get it done, you're okay. If you let yourself coast a day and then you let yourself coast another day, that turns into 3 days, which turns into a week. And now all of a sudden you're coasting. And remember, we talked yesterday, you can only coast one way, and that's downhill. Nobody coasts uphill, and everything you want is up here. So just be cautious around that. Recognize what your day looks like. That's why I keep such a specific calendar, right? I want to be able to look through and say, okay, typically between 12:10 and 12:30 is when I eat my lunch. And I don't oftentimes schedule anything else in that 20 minutes because that's the breath I get to take in the middle of the day. Other than that, for me, most of my days are scheduled. And if any of you have ever seen my calendar, you know, I'm scheduled literally back to back to back to back to back. I work from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to make sure that everybody, to go back to something Marlene said earlier, right? My level of customer service is judged by all of you. You are who I serve. There are 600 of you. And so I have to be really, really consistent and really clear with my calendar to make sure that the level of service that you expect and that you deserve from me shows up. That's being purposeful about your calendar, just by the way. And I'm going to tell you, you know, when I learned that, when we shut down two Marches ago, late March and into early April, we were probably only about 500 strong at that moment in time. However, there were still 500 of you and only one of me. And what I found was more of you needed more of my time because there was so much uncertainty going on. There was so much that we didn't know what was happening one day to the next. You know, my sellers are asking me this, my buyers are asking me this. And I found myself kind of inundated with requests for conversations. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to solve that issue. And so I chose to solve it 2 different ways. The first way I chose to solve it was to address as many people at one time as I possibly could, which is how the 9 o'clock Zoom call was born. And for those of you who were around back when we shut down, in those first few months, I think from March through June or maybe even July, we had a 9 o'clock Zoom and a 4:30 follow up at the end of the day, because sometimes things change so drastically during the day, we needed new information to come out at the end of the day. So we bookended the days. And I started something during that time period where I chose a couple of hours in my day and I broke it down into 10-minute segments. And whoever needed to speak to me, whoever needed time, they got put into a slot. And so you got the 10 o'clock slot or the 10:10 slot or the 10:20 slot or the 10:30 slot. And I lived by that for months to make sure everybody got what they needed. Again, customer service, via getting really purposeful about my calendar. Does that help? You know, I tell you these stories, I hope they don't bore you to tears, but I tell you them because I want you to recognize that there is no expert on all of this stuff, right? We have these conversations to make sure that everyone understands how you use these as tools. So, because as business owners, you need to be able to tame a lot of this stuff. And I hope that some of these stories that I'm telling you, that Donna tells you, right, are you heard and utilized from the perspective of, like, nobody's got it all figured out. We each get up and say, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to use that tool to fix this issue today because I didn't have this issue yesterday. And now because of the environment or because of something that occurred, I'm now called on to behave differently. That shutdown for me forced a couple of E to P moments, right? Some of them needed to happen very quickly. And so we just got real purposeful about certain things. And the gift of the pandemic, I believe, at least in my business life, has been the 9 o'clock Zoom call. It's 2 years later, we still do them every single day. I think at one point in the fall of 2020, we said something to the effect of, you know what, do we still need these? Or, maybe we can start to get rid of them. And everyone's like, what? No. Like, okay, we'll keep producing them then, right? As long as they are useful, we'll keep producing. And it's just a great way to maintain connection and community and deliver information at the same time. All right, enough of that. Whew. Personal perspective number 4. Make being learning-based the foundation of your action plan. Make being learning-based the foundation of your action plan. If you keep reading, it says a learning-based individual is an individual who's made the decision to use effective learning as the foundation piece for their plans to develop themselves. Right here, I'll give you a quick example of that. Debbie and I were on a regional Zoom call today with the regional leadership for the New York tri-state region. And towards the end, they had a discussion of some of the more productive team leaders in our region. And yes, yours were included, right? And so it was fascinating to watch them answer our regional director's questions and kind of share with everybody who was in the Zoom room some of what they do to create their results and some of their secrets and some of their this and their that. But what I was most fascinated with is that when one of them was talking, the other 4 were scribbling notes as fast as they could write, right? These are 5 people who had the best results from 2021, talking to everybody else. But the first thing I noticed was each of the 4 of them that were not talking at that moment in time, they were there to learn from each other about how to get better, what each other were doing, and they were scribbling. That's an example of being learning based. What can I learn today? Right, Donna said this yesterday. She told me like 2 years ago. She said one of my goals each day, one of the things I ask myself each day is, what will I learn today? My goal is to learn something new every single day. Right, that's a a learning-based affirmation, if you will, right? You're either green and growing or ripe and rotten. You get to choose. Here's what I've noticed though. When you're ripe and rotten, the birds come and peck at you. So why do you want to do that? Yuck. No thanks. Number 5, remove your limiting beliefs. Remove your limiting beliefs. Who wants to talk about that? What's a limiting belief? Why do you need to remove it?
Kate, sorry.
Go ahead, Kate.
It's something, well, just putting a cap on something that you can do without even giving it a shot yet. Like just already thinking that, yeah, just crushing the potential of what's there kind of.
Yeah, exactly right. Right, exactly right. What else? Stuart.
Old habits, complacency.
Yeah, those are some examples, right, of limiting beliefs. Yes, old habits, bad habits, habits that don't necessarily push you forward. Being complacent can be a limiting belief if you allow it to kind of creep into your mind. Right? I love what Kate said. It's kind of making decisions about what you can and can't do before you've actually even given it a go. Your head is kind of decided, yes, here's where you'll stop. What else, Donna?
Also, whose beliefs are they? And that's one of the things that John Aycock talks a little bit about in Soundtracks. That's what you go in a deep dive in Quantum Leap. Whose beliefs are they? Are they mine? Where did they come from? And why am I living with them?
Yeah, indeed. It's like when you, what's that saying? Don't allow other people to take up space in your head if you're not willing to charge them rent or something like that, right? So are they your beliefs? Sometimes they are yours and they are limiting, right? We all have limiting beliefs. But remember, awareness is transformational. So when you become aware of those limiting beliefs, ultimately you get to start questioning them. Ask yourself the question, is that 100% true? Like when you have that thought, prove it, right? Prove it. Remember that there are words that are your friends and there are words that are not your friends in this respect. Can't, but. I might steer clear of those. We had an issue in my house. I have 2 children. My children are now 24 and 19, almost 20. And we had an issue in my house where when my daughter was a teenager, there were 2 issues going on. A, she was allowing other people to put beliefs into her head that took up residence, right? That she then believed. So we had to kind of help her understand that, her thoughts needed to be front and center, and everybody else's, it doesn't matter what anybody else says, thinks, or does. The other issue that we had was she started down this path of always focusing on the things that she couldn't do. There's a lot of can't being said in my house. Well, I can't do that. Whether it was schoolwork, whether it was math or science, my daughter is not my academic, right? My son's my academic. My daughter's more of the athlete of the 2 of them. Doesn't mean she's not smart. She just doesn't love it as much. And so she decided that she just couldn't do it. I can't. And then she went out and found evidence as to why she couldn't do it. So we had to work real hard to make sure that we kind of banned that word can't in my house. It's like, well, let's focus on what you can do. Well, I can't do that math problem. Okay, well, what part of it can you do? Can you do the first part? Well, let's do that. Let's do the first part. Is there a struggle with the second part of it? All right, well, how do we overcome struggle? What do you need to have, learn, or know in order to complete that math problem? Right? It's just, it's more of a question conversation and getting rid of certain words, right? In my head, can't equals won't. Can't is the word you use when you are unwilling to figure it out, right? When Debbie and I were in the field together a long, long time ago, it was like the 40s, right, Deb? When we were still listing and selling real estate together, when we started at Century 21. Well, I started at Century 21 when she was there back in, I think, again, it was after the war, I know, so maybe it was the late 40s. But the we shared an office in the back of that office, and we would stick things on the wall. It drove some of our colleagues a little crazy because we just put letters, and then people would ask us what they stood for, and we wouldn't tell them, and it would drive them a little nuts. But one of those things was FIO, figure it out, right? Just figure it out. Some other ones were GREG, listings equals Greg, the gift of the real estate gods. Another one was GOI, get over it. But we put them on the wall to remind us that when you know what, everyone has a struggle, everyone's days go sideways, everyone gets to a point and says, oh, I'm not sure what to do. What comes next, however, has everything to do with whether you allow limiting beliefs into your world or you begin to become an unlimited thinker. Right? Unlimited thinking says it's all possible. And when you realize it's all possible, then you start to bring in the probable and start pushing forward on solutions, right? Just find solutions. FIO, figure it out. There's another version of that that has more F's in it, but I'm not going to use that one on the, somebody, I told that story to somebody a couple of weeks ago and they said, oh, really? I always thought it was, and they said the other one. And I said, well, you could use that one too. I'm just going to use the shorter version. How's that? All right, personal perspective number 6, be accountable. Be accountable. There are 2 behavior styles that you can choose from, and that is one of accountability or one of being a victim, right? The other side of accountability has that being a victim creep in. One has you get up and realize that if it's to be, it's up to me, right? You are in complete control of the outcome of your life, of your business. You get to take 110% credit for all the awesome things in your world. And you also get to take 110% responsibility for all the stuff that maybe is less spectacular, right? It's all you. It's all you. I'll give you another quick example. My kids love the fact that they're part of your learning process. I luckily they don't go to this YouTube channel because they'd be like, okay, really? Like you're airing my dirty laundry? And yet they're good examples, right? And so my son was a swimmer when he was in high school, and he was really good. He was a butterfly specialist, and he was really good at that. And he started down this path of blaming everybody else for the things that happened to him. If he didn't swim well, it was because a teacher gave him too much homework the night before and he had no choice but to stay up all night, and so he wasn't well rested. If he didn't do well on a test, right? And again, my son is kind of my academic, and so he was that straight A honors student. If he didn't do well on a test, it was because the teacher or the professor wasn't good at what they did, or they sent the teaching assistant in, so we're not getting good. It was always about what somebody else did. And after a couple of months of this, right, I kind of caught on after a while in having this dialogue. We again had to kind of step in and ask some questions around that, because he was headed down this path of really becoming a victim of his environment by not taking responsibility for the things that he needed to take responsibility for to affect the outcome, to have a different result. And again, by asking a couple of questions and helping him start to realize that that's the path he was on, he became more accountable, took more control of his world, and kind of course corrected on that. Here's my point. I tell you stories about my children when they were teenagers. Many of you are hearing those stories either in your own kids or in yourselves, because it's not just kids who have those issues, right? Adults have those issues too. By bringing awareness to them, we just get to say, okay, well, now I'm aware that this is how I'm behaving. Now I need to make a choice. Am I going to continue to behave in that manner, or will I make a different choice? Right? Accountability versus being the victim says to me that if I showed up and said to all of you, you know, if you were all better students, I'd be a much better instructor. Instead of just saying, if I expect better results as an instructor, I need to be a better instructor. I need to go and do the things that I need to do to show up for you the way I need to show up for you. That has nothing to do with you. That would be me being a victim, right? So if you don't live in the world of, if they were different, I'd be better. Because I can tell you, I hear it all the time. If my buyers were better buyers, I would sell more houses. If my sellers understood the market better, they wouldn't make the mistake of overpricing their house, and therefore I wouldn't be in the position I'm in, having this unsaleable listing, right? All of those are examples of, if they were different, I'd be better. Examples of not taking an accountable approach to your business. Make sense? I think there was a whole bunch going on in the chat. I want to just see what that is. Comparison is the thief of joy. Oh yeah, I like that a lot, Danielle. Comparison is the thief of joy. You got it. Yeah, don't compare yourself to somebody else. And Donna, did you follow it up with the bold law? Yeah, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides, right? Don't compare your insides, how you feel about something, to somebody's outsides, what it looks like they have or are experiencing. Because I can tell you something very, very certain about that. What somebody else looks like they're experiencing is never what they're actually experiencing. So you think you're comparing the way you feel to the way somebody else feels, or the results they're getting. It's never what you think it is, ever, ever. Because you're not inside of them, you're just inside of you. You only get to figure out you. Make sense? Any questions on the 6 personal perspectives? Can you see how using these as tools for your head can assist you in getting better and better results? I want you to recognize something. We wouldn't spend as much time on all of this head stuff if it wasn't going to show up tomorrow and next week and the week after that and the month after that, not just in class, but in your life and in your business, right? This stuff shows up every day. And what's so cool about being armed with these tools is you'll start to recognize, oh, you know what? I think I'm in my 80. I'm going to make a conscious choice to jump from what I was about to do or what I've been doing for the past 30 minutes, now that I've made myself aware of it, to something that is specific in my 20. I'm going to make that change. Oh, you know what? I think I just behaved like a big old victim. What's the more accountable approach to that? How can I bring some clarity to the table? Well, maybe start by not having a conversation with the person sitting at the computer next to you about how horrible your buyers are because they just don't understand the market. If they were different, I'd be better. No, what if you just decided to be better? And instead, in that scenario, decided that you were going to learn some different scripts or techniques to sit down and have a different conversation with those buyers so they understood the market they were in better, so they would make better decisions. You know, it's funny, oftentimes in class or in masterminds when we're talking about script work, when we're talking about talking with clients and communication techniques and styles. Someone is always apt to say, well, you can't make people do things. Their decisions are their decisions. Well, that is true. That is true. You can't make people do things. However, you can set certain expectations. You can have certain conversations that allow people to make the best decisions for themselves, which oftentimes align with what you're frustrated with when you don't do that. Why didn't they just offer the extra $10,000? Well, did they really understand, based on the expectations that you set about the market, that that was necessary? Did you do it in a way that didn't sound real estate-y? Or did they just kind of hear, well, clearly she wants me to buy a house, so she's going to tell me to spend whatever she has to spend. I want you to recognize something. And part of the mission of you in this organization is all about changing the way the world looks at real estate professionals. Because in case you didn't know it, we don't have a terribly good rap out in the world, right? I think it's above used car salesmen, maybe bad attorneys, but not terribly much higher. That's why it's so important to understand communication, understand customer service, understand expectation setting. Because we're not only looking to make sure that we're serving our clients at the highest level by helping them make the best decisions possible for them in the moment, but we're also looking to change the world. Anybody else have that on their to-do list in 2022? I'm going to tell you what, I maybe this sounds kind of nutty, but I have that on my to-do list pretty much every year. Okay, what are we going to do this year that changes the world? Small ways. I don't have to be on the front page of CNN, but if something we do or say or present or host or practice or offer helps any one of you achieve at a higher level, or helps you send a different message to a client who then gets to experience what real estate is all about, what that experience can be like, right? That's how we change the world, slowly, slowly, slowly. Maybe it sounds nuts. However, what we do is important. And when we do it really well, you can change somebody's world. I want you to think about it. Think about you understanding real estate investing at a high level and bringing that back to your database. And just one person in your entire database says, that sounds kind of interesting. Can we talk more about that? And you have a meeting. You bring them to a seminar. You have another meeting. And you help them buy that first property. And they get addicted. And you help them buy the second property and the third property and the fourth property and the 14th property and the 24th property. And it's because of you that they are now financially free and get to choose whether or not they go to work or not. They have this massive legacy they can leave their children and their grandchildren with this whole portfolio that you have helped them obtain. You have not only changed that person's life, you have changed the trajectory of their family for generations to come. That's crazy important. That's kind of what we're talking about. What do you think of that? John Mendez.
I was gonna say, one of the things that I did really implement into my business from last Ignites class was taking the time to figure out my big why. And I think I probably spent like a couple days on it, honestly. Like I stopped everything. I stopped, looking up, how to listing consultation, all that. It just took a time to just really figure out my big why. and what stuck with me. And I did what you told me to. You know, I made a little page and I made it my lock screen. It's been my lock screen since that, a couple of days after that Ignite class back in the last session. And it really fueled me to, you know, start my podcast that I'm just about to premiere on Sunday. And it's like, you talk about investing in real estate, and it's like, I wanted to do that. And I know that the world of like personal finance is like, there's a lot of bad information out there. And most of the information that's good isn't really talked about at all. And one thing I really realized is that no matter, you know, what the information is, if you put two people side by side and they say the same exact line, or the same exact tonality, same everything, right? The same delivery, one person is going to resonate with one crowd, and the other person is going to resonate with another. And, you know, that really helped fuel me, because it's like, I have something that I have to say to certain people, or else they'll never get it. And that kind of motivates you, because now it's bigger than me just, you know, making a little video on how to invest in real estate. It's like, it becomes like something that's, you know, beyond you. And once it gets beyond you, it's like, it fuels you even more, because it's not, when it's just about you, you can take a day off, because like, oh, you know, I'll wait tomorrow. But it's like, I can't wait tomorrow, because if I don't do what I got to do now, the people that I could have impacted today will never be impacted, and that will be on me. And a podcast that I listened to by the name of Jordan Peterson, he put it in way better words than I ever could. But pretty much the idea, one of his ideas is like, you know, strive to become the best person that you can be, so you can impact the most people that you can potentially impact. And that, you know, that session about Big Why, and, you know, it really motivated me to do a lot more. And now I plan on, I had 2 appointments today with friends from back in high school. And it's not like buyer consults or listing appointments. It's like appointments because they wanted to get started and they're interested in investing in real estate. And I already had the first one earlier today with one of my friends from high school. And I pretty much told him the basics. And then I have another in one of my high school classes. I'm gonna pretty much teach her the basics so she could hopefully potentially get started.
I love it. I love it. You know, it's funny, John, I just figured something out about you. And so one of the reasons I love you so much is because I never thought I would find somebody who talks faster than I do. But you definitely win the prize. And that's only my kind of haha to get into what I really want to say to you. You're a perfect example of someone who listens to stuff and then gets into action, right? Like, hear something, do it. Hear something, do it. Guys, I'm going to tell you what, that's the key to all of this. You want your business to take off, whether you're in for 15 minutes or 50 years. You want your business to take off, listen to some of this stuff that we talk about and then do it. Listen to stuff out on James Shaw's 8 o'clock call. Listen to stuff on the 9 o'clock call that we do. Come to our masterminds, go to family reunion, whether digital or on site, whichever you choose, right? Go and listen to people who have something to say about growing a real estate business and how you do it and what you do and what you focus on, and then do it, right? Just go and do it. So John brought us right to the end. Your homework is page 19 through 22. 19 through 22 in Power Session 1, which is all about your big why. I want you to read through that and spend a little time on that big why. If you want more information on your big why, you can turn to page 77, I think. Yes, 77 in the MREA for more information about your big why. We'll talk a little bit tomorrow if anybody wants to kind of share through some of that work on big why. Here's where we're going tomorrow. I know a lot of you are anxious to get to source of business and some more practical conversation. We're going to pivot our course tomorrow and start really working with some practical information so that you can start putting some of this stuff on the road. We're going to start with turning your financial goals into appointment numbers, right? What does that look like? I want to earn this. How many appointments do I have to have every single year? Would that be helpful to know? Okay, for the 3 of you who said yes, we're doing that first thing tomorrow.
Yes, it will.
For the rest of you, I'm sorry, you'll have to suffer through a 10-minute conversation about turning money into appointments, right? Because the reality of growing your business is appointments is what you focus on. You don't focus on selling houses, you focus on appointments, 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 appointments. And when you understand that the focus is on appointments and what a focus on a certain number of appointments turns into when it all goes through the funnel, it will help you track the important stuff. So we'll make sure that you have that conversation. We're going to talk about scripts tomorrow, and then we're going to start into source of business with some database conversations. I want to leave you today, because I told you the last 5 minutes would be about ahas. So be thinking of what you want to share as an aha. But I want to leave you today with something that I meant to give you yesterday and I forgot. And that is the definition of your job description. It's really important that you take this down and understand it. So the other part of your homework is I want you to think about this definition, and we'll talk about it when we plug back in tomorrow, 4 o'clock. The definition of your job description, it may be different than what some of you are thinking. A lot of times I hear, oh, it's to make sure that buyers and get their sellers and sellers get their buyers. My job description is high customer service, or it's negotiation at a high level. All of those things are part of the job, but they don't describe the job. The job description of a real estate agent is as follows: to interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best business decision possible. To interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best business decision possible. That's what you do for a living. If you thought you signed up for something else, that's actually what you signed up for. Every step of the way, if you will memorize that and take it to heart, it will help you figure out what the right thing to do is, what the next thing to do is, what the best thing to do is every single time you're at a decision point with clients. My role is to interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best decision possible. I can't tell you how many people still to this day text me or call me and say, hey, here's the scenario. What do you think the client should do? I am so sorry, that is not for me to say. I can help you brainstorm the options. However, the job is interpret the current conditions, and then the client will make the best decision possible. Well, we got multiple offers. How should we negotiate it? That's not for you or I to figure out. That's for the seller to figure out. Our job is to interpret current conditions. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have 14 offers. These are some of the ways that we can go about handling these 14 offers. I'm curious, which of those scenarios feels the best to you? Where do you have the most comfort? Which path would you choose? Well, I'm not sure. We could do this one or this one. Can you talk to me about pros and cons of each of those? Absolutely. Now that we've talked about pros and cons of each of those paths forward, I'm curious, which do you choose? It's not about you, it's about them. And it's not about all the things that you know. It's about helping them with what you know so that they can make the best decision for themselves. That's not easy for many of you. Remember, you can be the smartest person in the room. The goal, however, is to convince the client that they're the smartest person in the room, even if it really is you. And you get there with this definition of your job description and asking really powerful questions. The good news and the fun part of what we're going to do together is we're going to spend the rest of our time together fleshing out that definition and giving you words and scenarios that you can then use as tools to assist in getting that done. Well, look at that. I used up our aha time. Somebody want to give one quick aha? Go ahead, first person to unmute. Go ahead, Danielle.
Okay. Hi, Rick. One of the ahas was like, you don't have to make yourself available 24 hours to be successful, even as a brand new agent.
Woo-hoo! Hey, you know what? If nobody else got anything else from our time together in 2 hours, except what Danielle just put on the table, our time was well spent. I
have
just,
something.
go ahead, Carly.
Even though I'm sorry, I was on the phone a lot of the time. This buyer just called me and he's like looking for like up to $4.5 million in Westport. So I wasn't gonna like ignore him. So I was like, I'm gonna have to watch it.
So hold on a second. So you opened the door, so I'm gonna walk through it, right? So here, it's a perfect example, right, of a choice that you made, right? So the choice you made was, instead of, when you go to the movies, and I'm not talking to Carly, but when you generally go to, you, capital Y-O-U, go to the movies, do you sit and watch the movies for 2 hours? Or are you like on your phone texting back and forth, or do you leave when someone calls? I want you to start deciding when you're going to be at the movies, right? Now, I'm not saying that because I think I'm more important than your $4 million buyer. That's not my point. My point is, we each have to make choices. It's just as possible for you to have an appointment and have the $4 million buyer have a conversation after your appointment. Again, whether that's Ignite or something.
I agree.
Right?
I didn't get his voicemail. He called me at like 1:30 and I missed the call and
Yeah,
it popped up while we were on there. So it's like, who is this person? So I listened to it, which I shouldn't have. And he was like, oh, like I want to check out. So I was like, oh, like let me call him back just in case, which I shouldn't have. I know.
It's all good. And I'm not picking on you. I'm not picking on you. It was just a perfect example. So thank you for being transparent.
I'm the perfect example of not being able to say no and prioritize. And my grandma's favorite saying is, no is a full sentence. And I need to start telling myself like, no, don't do that. Like the end. But I did learn the whole 20%, like the 7 activities get to the 20%. And I know the 80-20 rule. So that was definitely helpful in being like, okay, like, am I following these things, and are these productive tasks that are going to actually make me money, or am I just being busy rather than productive?
Got it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Those are great ahas. Anybody else? Go ahead, Moses.
There is no emergency in real estate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that most of us have to just keep learning and keep learning and keep learning and keep learning. And I will tell you, this is the promise I make to you. If you will accept that and allow it to kind of hit your ears and then sink into your body, and you just start living by it, your results will change. You'll actually like what you do better because you'll feel more in control of it. Because there are no emergencies. I promise you that.
Can you keep reminding me that every class?
Absolutely, I promise. We'll begin.
Everyone tell me 25 times a class.
Guys, it is a pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you so much for being so interactive and so smart. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a lovely evening. We're going to dive into the practical tomorrow, so buckle in. Have a good night.